Hello there, welcome to Inkquiring Minds. My name is Doug and I'm back with another Pen Resurrection Sunday video. Today's dead fountain pen on the slab, ready for resurrection, is this 1942 Parker Vacumatic 3rd generation in emerald pearl. And this one is a debutante model and actually what they call the senior debutante model. This was the first year of the newly redesigned 3rd generation with the rounded blind cap plastic plunger rod, and it has that split arrow clip with the blue diamond. There was a debutante that was smaller than this called the sub-deb or sub-debutante, and it was 4.5 inches long, capped. This one is 4 3/4 inches long, capped. And here you can see what it looks like next to a standard model. Everything was just a bit smaller, including the clips. And for the edification of those of you that don't like waiting through the 30 minutes of restoration for the video, it takes me longer than 30 minutes to restore these pens, but on video it takes 30 minutes. I'm going to show what the pen looks like up here before resurrection, and we'll show what the pen looks like after resurrection down below. Some of you will just close your eyes during that moment so you don't have a spoiler. So let's take a look at this fountain pen and see what it needs to be resurrected to the land of the writing. From the top, we see the top jewel sitting a little bit proud right there. Plastic black jewel. It might just not be screwed all the way down inside there. The clip is tight though, so it isn't wanting to move. The clip is in really good shape, but it's tarnished. And you might think, okay, that's all pitted and tarnished and all the gold is gone. You'd be wrong in thinking about that.
Well, they were wrong then, weren't they?
A little polish and that will come right back. The polishing process might take away that blue diamond, but I've got paint that matches that enamel and I can repaint like I did with my blue pearl, repaint that blue enamel inside that diamond. Lots and lots of wear, typical of a pen this age. And the cap band is very tarnished, but this too is gold. Let's get really close because it's so dark you can't see that pattern. But it's different than the regular standard Vacumatic of the time. The standard Vacumatic's gold ring has chevrons on it, whereas the debutante, the senior debutante, has these arrows and diamonds. So there's sort of a diamond pattern and then an arrow, and then the arrows facing the other way, and the tails of the arrows form a diamond on that side. Very interesting. The barrel has an MF heat stamped into it, so it's been personalized. Because that isn't a name, it's just initials, I might take that out. If it's a person's name, it's something that has some history to it, but that just might mean Massey Ferguson, who knows. And then there's the imprint, G.O.S. Parker, Parker Vacumatic, made in the USA, and there is a very faint 2 right there with no dots. So that's the 4th quarter of 1942. That would be the first year after the war began, and the first year of these Parker Vacumatic 3rd generations. With the rounded blind cap, this one has plenty of teeth marks in it. I don't know why people have to be biters.
He's a biter.
But back in the day, you used to think about what you're going to write, and you'd chew on your pen or your pencil while you're thinking. The blind cap comes off, and there is the celluloid piston rod, and it feels like there's a sack in there. The barrel should be translucent, but you can see that it's dark blue. It's sort of glowing dark blue, so that means there's been blue ink in there. Big surprise. And there's lots of gack on that barrel. I don't know what that is. We'll clean that off. It feels like there's a diaphragm in there, but I'll be taking that out anyway. The debutante size Vacumatic takes a debutante size diaphragm. It's the same size as Parker 51s use. All Parker 51 Vacumatics use a debutante sized diaphragm. So let's unscrew the cap and see the section and the nib. And you can see there's lots of gunk on it. It's a much smaller nib than the standard size Parker Vacumatic nib. Here they are side by side. You can see the difference in size. And that section has lots of wear on it. and there's a couple of marks on it as well that I'll need to polish out. That's ebonite right there, and the ebonite feed looks intact. There is an A right there, which I think stands for accountant style feed, which is a narrower feed than a broad nib would get, or a stub nib would get. Those feeds would have a W for wide on them. And that nib looks to be in pretty good shape. And it looks like a fine. Yeah, it might need a little bit of work. We'll see what cleaning brings. And of course that section should come off. These sections were screwed on, and I try to get it off without any heat first, but no. So I need to soak these parts a little bit first in some pen flush, which is 90% distilled water and 10% ammonia, for just a couple of minutes. Ebonite does not like water or ammonia, so we just want to, in the ultrasonic bath, loosen up some of that old ink that's inside that cap and inside that nib and feed. And then we'll get it out. We'll apply some heat to that section and unscrew it to knock out that feed and check the barrel. So there, we're out of the bath here. Just about a minute. I think I had it in the ultrasonic. And let's give that section a turn without any heat first. Oh, there it is. Okay, these sections were generally never shellacked down or glued down. So that's just a lot of old ink in there. There we go. And a lot of old ink inside the barrel. So there is definitely a diaphragm in there. Let's take a look at it with our inspection camera and see what condition it's in. I'll probably replace it anyway. Let's take a look. So that diaphragm actually looks pretty good. So it's relatively recent. So I think I'm going to take it out anyway. I might be able to get it out without damaging it, and then we can clean the barrel completely inside and out. But both of these things are going back in the bath again for another couple of minutes. And then, let's see, first, let's take the breather tube out. There we go. Breather tube, very short for the debutante. There's the ebonite feed, just sticking a little bit proud of that tiny section. And so these will go back in the bath, and then I'll come back and knock that feed out and take a look at that nib. And that nib is already starting to look better just from a couple of minutes in the ultrasonic. So let's put it in a block here. Get out our trusty hammer sandwich.
Go and get me a hammer. Hammer? Hammer. Hammer. Oh, a hammer sandwich. A hammer.
My hamster?
No, not your hamster. How can I knock a nail in with your hamster?
And see if we can tap that feed out. Now, I'm going to let it soak for a little bit more. I don't want to force it because this stuff can get brittle and break over the years. In the meantime, let's get out our vac extractor from the inky nib and put the collet on it and see whether we can get that pump to budge out of there. Even though that diaphragm seems in really good shape, I want to take it out of there so I can clean the inside of that barrel as well. So without any heat, let's give it a try. No, nothing. And let's give it a little bit of heat here. There we have it. So I'm just going to put those last couple of threads back on again and take the collet off. There we go. And now we have to disengage the back of that diaphragm because it's been squished by the end of the filling unit in there against the sides of the inside of the barrel. And so we have to knock that out gently as well. So I'm going to just put it in to my knockout block and use the same rod to try to gently push the top of that out. Now, the top of that unit is an ebonite pellet retainer that can crack, so I'm going to be very gentle with it. Experts have said that you should use a tube that goes around the top of that to tap it out, or a wooden dowel, but I'm going to try to press it out gently. Got it part way out. There we go. And you can see that's a good example. Get my mitts off here. That's a good example of how it works. This is the way that diaphragm should look on the end of that filler unit. And that's where that bevel right there presses on the inside of the barrel to seal it. There's no glue needed or anything there, but when you do unscrew it, that's still stuck in there. So I gave it a push from the top, and there's the top of that pellet right there. Under that latex is ebonite, and that's where I pressed on it, and so that is vulnerable to cracking, and that's why they say you shouldn't use any force on it. And that's the way that pump should behave, just like that. It's like the diaphragm in your abdomen moves up and down and moves air in and out of your lungs.
Again. That's fine, Sergeant.
Well, can I stop breathing now?
Yes.
Let's put that aside and look at the barrel. We're starting to get some of the translucency back again there because I cleaned all that ink out of there. But I'm going to polish that inside and out. So this will go back in the ultrasonic bath with the barrel, and we'll go check on the nib feed and section. And here we are back from the bath again, and each time it's in the bath, the nib looks a little bit better. Let's see what it will budge this time. I'm sure it's just old ink that's doing that, holding it up. There we go. There's our nib feed and section. Lots of old ink in there. Let's put it over here, show what it looks like before, and we'll show what it looks like after on the other side. Let's take a look at that nib with my loop. Oh, that's interesting. The nib says 5P, which to me means 1945. I'm not sure what the P means. It might mean it's a replacement nib, but generally it says R for a replacement. We'll polish that up and find out exactly what it says, but the pen is marked 1942. The nib is marked 1945. That's possible as well. You wouldn't find the body and cap of the pen made in 1942 and then a 1945 nib put in it when it's assembled. That might be a replacement. And let's look at the section. It's very dull, and there's a couple of marks on it as well. Any marks there I'll sand out with some micro mesh. That mark right there needs to be sanded out. And let's look at the feed. Not too bad. It's kind of shiny now. There's the A, off-center A. They just stamped these. I'm pretty sure that means accountant feed. An accountant feed would have a narrower channel to it than a wide feed. And there's our nib all polished up, and it does indeed say 5 with no dots. So that's the fourth quarter of 1945. And a P, which I have no idea what that means. Maybe it's P for Parker. Any of you Parker aficionados out there might know what that P means? Please let me know in the comments below. And there's our ebonite feed. A few divots there. You see those marks on these vintage feeds. Many times they're using a tool to set that nib, and it leaves a couple of marks. I know Watermans tend to have marks like that. And here's a Waterman feed right there with a couple of really deep gouges in it. It looks like a tool that they use to grab onto the nib to set it or to heat set it or something like that. Well, that's looking very nice and shiny. And there's the section all shiny and new. The scratches are gone, and it looks great. I've been examining this latex diaphragm, and I thought maybe I could reuse it, but even though it's pliable, it's not functioning correctly. It keeps binding on itself. I think it's getting long in the tooth, and all the elasticity is gone. It functions well sometimes, but then it doesn't want to fully retract like that. I put talc on it and everything to get it to move. It's supposed to go in and out from that spot there, and you see it sort of does, and it gets hung up right there. It doesn't want to fully retract again. And I felt that when I first got the pen. It sort of went in part way and then hung up. So I'm going to replace that diaphragm off of that pen. Let's peel this off of here. Peel it inside out. It's really hung up on itself inside. Now let's see if I can salvage it. Instead of pulling that out and replacing it, that pump seal right there is very, very good shape. Look at that. No corrosion or anything. So I hate to give up on this in case it might work properly. Let's check the length of it. It's very short. I wonder whether the debutantes need to be shorter. I'm just measuring this, and it's 25 millimeters. And my research tells me that it needs to be 28 to 30 millimeters. 28 to 30. There's 30 right there. So I think I'm going to pull that off of there and replace it. Let's just pull it out. There we go. And the pellet came out with it. So this is a fairly recent diaphragm that someone's replaced, but they've cut it way too short. And that will inhibit the ink capacity of the pen. That pellet retainer is looking in excellent shape. That's ebonite. So let's put a new diaphragm on this, deb size. I'm just going to trim the end of this first a little bit. And then I'm going to measure out the 30 millimeters right there. Make a mark. And now let's cut it at 30 millimeters. And then push that pellet with my pellet pusher. Push it into the receptacle until it clicks, just like that. And we measure it, and we've got exactly 30 millimeters. And we get out some talc, and be generous with the talc, because that's how it lubricates that latex. And then, again, this process of peeling this diaphragm back on itself can be easy, and it can be hard. There's no in between. Let's see if we can get it going. Get a cuff rolling here, and get it sliding on itself, like that. And this one's going to be easy. Look at that. It went right back on itself. Or maybe I'm becoming a genius at this.
What's up, Doc?
Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Wile E. Coyote. Genius.
And it's just giving up the ghost and giving in, because they know the master is here. Let's see. Now that should work. There we go. That's the way it should work. It shouldn't actually get hung up on itself when it's going back. And when you have the correct length, you get a lot more travel, and a lot more ink will fill up inside the barrel. And speaking of the barrel, I've got it right here. There it is. And it's looking very nice and translucent. I've only just put it in the bath a few times. I'm going to clean it inside with a plastic test tube cleaning brush to get any old ink and staining off the inside. But it looks fairly clean. And so before I put this vacuum pump back in the barrel, I'm going to clean it up inside and out. And then I'm going to reassemble the nib and feed into the section and put the section inside the barrel and give the nib a dip test to make sure it doesn't need any adjustment before I finish restoring this pen. So I put the nib and the feed together just like that. Get some gripper material, squeeze it top and bottom. I've got the breather tube installed, and it's that yellow celluloid. It's all clean. You got to make sure that air path through the breather tube to that hole right there is clear. And I've installed the section in the barrel to make it easier to grip, and I sanded down the ebonite stem of that feed to make it a little bit silky so it slides nicely. And then I'm just going to turn that a little bit to find where that sweet spot was that it lived in for so many years, where it was installed, and give that a push right there. And then we'll check to see where it is. It's not as deep as it was. It was sitting proud of there, so I might give it a little bit more of a shove. And that's looking better. Now we can give this nib a dip test and check out how well it writes. Just checking the alignment, and it looks like it's slightly misaligned. This looks like a fine nib, and so they just need to be adjusted a little bit. I'm going to turn it upside down and press it on some paper a little bit just to make sure that nib and feed are touching right there, and that actually helped out the alignment. There it is there, looking very good. Get out some Waterman's Serenity and just dip the nib and see what we have here. 1942 Parker Vacumatic Debutante, and this feels like a fine 14 karat gold nib, very nicely wet. It's a little bit of a bounce to it, but not much. Yeah, a little bit of a gold bounce. And let's check out our line widths. There's horizontal, there's vertical, a little bit of a push, there's with flex. Well, this feels very nice. It's very smooth, and a hint of feedback. I might polish out some of that feedback, make it a little bit smoother, but that's a nice writing nib, so I don't need to do anything to it. So I'm going to take the nib and feed and section off the pen, and then we're going to install this vacuum pump so I can put the blind cap back on so I can polish up the barrel. Because I want that blind cap in line with the barrel so that I don't get any seams on that. And our cap has been in the bath for a while, and it's looking very nice. Even that band is starting to come up. It's not as dark as it was. The clip is certainly looking a lot better. And I'm just going to see whether I can get that clip off of there just by using a little gripper material. That jewel looks like it's sitting up there, and it shouldn't be, actually. Yep, it turns very easily. It's just finger tight on there, so it needs to be tighter than that. So there is the black jewel plastic, and there's the clip, so we can do a polish of that. So let's put the clip over here to see what it looks like before polishing. And now I can go after that cap and polish it completely. I'm going to masking tape off that cap band until I get through the first bits of the micro mesh. I'll go from 1500 grit down to about 4000 grit. Then I'll take the masking tape off and polish from 4000 to 12,000. Then I put it on my Dremel buffer tool and polish it the rest of the way. And the same thing with the barrel. But let's put that vacuum pump back in this pen first. I'm going to use a little bit of silicone oil just around the edge of that cuff, the leading edge, and that will allow it to slide into the barrel without kinking up on itself. I sort of twist it back and forth a little bit until I feel it give, and then we can start putting it into the barrel. I'm going to put some silicone oil on those threads as well. Then we get out our collet, clamp it down, and then just run it back and forth a little bit and let that grease take effect. We want it to slide easily. We don't want that celluloid to break. Just moving it in and out until it slides gently, and then hand tight at the end. Release the collet. There we go. Now let's use our inspection tool again. Go inside that barrel and give it a couple of pumps. Make sure it's working correctly. Looks good. Now I can go ahead and put the blind cap back on, and I can polish up that barrel as one piece, and we'll polish up the cap as one piece as well. So let's put the cap up here, and we'll show what it looks like down below when it's been polished. And let's do the same thing with the barrel. I'm going to get rid of those initials, MF, but we're going to keep the imprint right there. And we're going to get rid of those bite marks right there as well. And here we are back with the barrel and the cap all polished up and looking beautiful. Those initials are gone, no trace. They weren't very deep, but the imprint is still there, the date of manufacture as well. And let's take a look at the cap, and it certainly looks a lot better than it did, especially that cap ring. Look at that. It's gorgeous. See what gold does? It was totally black when I first got that pen, and now this pen looks terrific. All we have to do now is put it back together again. So we need to put the clip back on, because here is the clip all polished up. You see it on this side of the screen. Isn't that gorgeous? And I didn't lose the blue diamond. I thought that enamel might get buffed out, but it's very resilient. Gorgeous. So let's put that clip back together again with the jewel finial. Now with the standard Vacumatics, I always place the clip right in line with that little plaque location there, that little cartouche where Parker left it bare so that you can put your initials in there if you want. That doesn't exist on the Debutante model. The other thing we want to think about with clip placement is where the cap comes down to and where you want it to line up. Do you want the clip to line up with the imprint of Parker Vacumatic? And that happens to come right there over that breather hole right there. So I think that's a good place. So let's do that. We're going to put it right there. Put the pencil inside as a mandrel here. And I haven't polished up the top jewel yet, but I will once I've got it in place. We'll see how far down it goes, because when I got it, it was slightly raised. Back it off of that hole a little bit. Tighten it right there. Got to push on the pencil. And then give it a slight twist into position to make it really tight. There we go. And that's where it sits. That's a little bit unusual. Maybe that's where they looked in 1942 when they went to the black plastic jewels. So I'll give that a buff, just a little bit of buff to shine it up because it's a little bit matte right now. And we'll come back and put the pen back together again and ink it up. And there we go, just a couple seconds on the buffer and it's all shined up. So let's put the pen back together again. Here's our section with the breather tube installed. It's going to add a little bit of silicone grease to those threads. These pens don't tend to leak right there, but it makes it screw in very easily. And I have a little bit of polish inside those threads. I'll brush that away with a soft toothbrush. Give our nib a little bit of a polish, and I think we're ready to fill this pen. It looks beautiful. Look at that emerald, how it shines up. Just beautiful. It's really chatoyant. Look at that shine. So we weigh the body of the pen with the blind cap on. 7.71 grams. Take off the blind cap, leave it on the scale. Get out some Watermans, and we're going to give it several pumps here. 6 or 7 or so. Dunk the section in to the ink, push it down, and we see and hear bubbles. 5. Pause between strokes. 6, 7. I didn't pause there. And no more bubbles at 7 and 8. Now expect this pen is not going to have as much ink as my regular Parker Vacumatic. It does because this is a much thinner and smaller pen. So that's not too bad. 9.1 grams, which is 9.1 milliliters of ink. For a small pen, that's very good. Wear a section and nib a wipe. Get out some writing tools. I'm going to post this pen because it's a little bit short for me to write with unposted. There we go. And this is a 1942 Parker Vacumatic Debutante. And it has a fine 14 karat gold nib. Now, I wrote out some lines before, but since I've tuned it a bit, let's give it a try with no pressure and with a little bit of pressure here and measure out our lines with my Dominant Industries pad that I got from Gold Spot Pens. Thank you, Tom, for that. I think we're dry now. And so the first line is, so that's the horizontal line is 0.3. The vertical line, because I turned the nib sideways, is a 5. And with some pressure, it's an 8. So 0.3 to 0.5 to 0.8 millimeters. That's the line variation you get out of this pen, and that makes it a fine. Right in the middle there, 0.5 millimeters is a fine nib. Check the wetness. It's very wet. And now that I've tuned it, it is as smooth as a baby's bottom, with just a hint of feedback, which is the way I like it anyway. So I said there was a little bit of a bounce to it. It's not a flex nib, but you can get line variation out of it. Yeah, this is a very nice writer. Beautiful pen. And I'll come back instantly with my thoughts about this resurrection. So what do I like and what do I not like about this pen resurrection? This was almost the easiest resurrection yet, with the totally black cap band and clip only needing polishing. No big scratches other than a couple of bite marks in the end of the barrel and the blind cap, and a nib that needed only a tweak. I thought the only challenge I'd face here with this one was removing those initials, and they weren't very deep and it was very easy to remove them. It took no effort. Now, I don't mind taking initials out of barrels, but full names have some humanity and history imbued in the pen, so I hesitate to remove those. The section came off with no heat. The pump came out with just a touch of heat, and when I found that there was a working diaphragm in this pen, I thought, well, my job is done here. But that diaphragm wasn't behaving properly, and it was much too short anyway. I was a bit surprised that the nib on this pen was marked 1945, where the barrel is marked 1942. The nib could be a replacement, but I've never seen a replacement nib with anything other than an R for replacement stamped into it. So the P on the nib in this pen had me stumped. Let me know in the comments below or by writing me at inkquiringminds@gmail.com if you know what that P means on a Parker Vacumatic nib. I'd appreciate it. This is now a beautiful small pen with a gorgeous chatoyant emerald green stacked celluloid that is translucent to see your ink levels. It holds a full milliliter of ink and writes a wet, juicy, smooth line with a bit of a bounce. It's too small for my grip, and Wynne is still starry-eyed over her ERRATA lead Pocket Victorian, so I'm going to sell this pen for $175 US plus shipping. Remember that if you're an Inkquiring Minds member, you'll get 10% off the purchase price, and Inkquiring Minds members at the patron level of $5 a month will get a 20% discount on this pen. And there you have it. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that bell to get instant notifications whenever a new video is posted. And you can join as a member of my channel for only 99 cents a month, and I guarantee I'll answer your comments in the comments section. You'll get cool emojis, badges, sneak peek unboxing videos, as well as early access to all my videos the moment I upload them. And that just leaves it for me to say thank you for watching, and that's all she wrote.
I made this.